Let's use the massive profits from the energy companies to reduce fuel.
You could find somebody else today.
Do you want to take a leaflet as well? So that we don't go. Thank you. There you go. Oh, nice one. Cheers.
It's like a serpent type uniform.
Ready for 5 miles now.
Ready for 500 miles? Come on.
generation, as well hand hands feel the steel mills rust. What a role in the generation. Clear as winter ice, this is your paradise. There ain't no need for ya, there ain't no need for ya. Go straight to hell, boys. Go straight to hell, boys. Wanna join in a chorus of the Aberration blues when it's Christmas out at Ho Chi Minh City. Kitty say Papa, 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 Papa Sam, take me home. See me got photograph of you and Mama Sam, of you and Mama Sam. Let me tell you about your blood bamboo kid. It ain't Coca-Cola, it's rice. Straight to hell, boy. Go straight to hell, boy. Go straight to hell, boy. Go straight to hell, boy. Oh, Papa Sam, please take me home. Oh, Papa Sam, everybody, they wanna go home. So Mama Sam says, wanna play mind crazed banjo on the doggy drag ragtime USA in Parkland International. Hey, USA, where true came true, so here is rock back and rap poison. The Molotov says.
Hello everybody. Hi everybody, what a beautiful sunny day. I just want to let you know we're going to assemble the march now. Just here in front of that green gazebo there's a big blue all under one banner, Make Poverty History banner. If people could just start assembling and we'll leave in about 10 minutes. Thanks.
I've done it. I'll put that right in. Cheers. Cheers, everything. I still think that came in. Aye, it's birthday. Correct, we're going that way.
Right, I'll see you soon.
Marvin, we got to be tuned.
Yep. Ready, Andrew?
Sean, Chantel, Sean, let's move on to the grass. Sean, let's move on to the grass.
Go to that puddle.
Yeah, just
Go in front of the puddle then.
yeah.
Just move it.
Aye, just move it in front of the puddle. Right, go in front of the puddle, look here.
Aye. You go in front of the puddle.
Photo, quick, quick.
Shadow's coming down. Behind the banner.
Hello, are you live streaming for India Live?
No.
No, cool.
I'm
Excellent.
just doing it for myself.
Wonderful. Just wanted to double check so I'm not doing the same thing twice.
I'm sorry.
Aye, go. Right, we go line in front of the front papers. Right. Chantel, go in front of the door. Here. Chantel.
How can you miss him? Right, these people get on the main street and fucking...
Right, everybody looking at me. Right, sir, I can't see you. If you could go down slightly if you don't mind. Right, everybody looking.
Sorry.
Here. I'm on it.
Right, one more. That's fine, thank you very much. Right,
Let's warm up and have a wee tune. Right, Susie.
But I do think you walked up to the... first few floor going down the hill.
John Taylor and Wilma are taking the front here. We're taking the banner.
As long as you give me the directions.
As far away as possible.
I don't think anybody kens his first name. It's called the Flagmaker of Paisley. So when was the last time you seen this when it was hanging up and up? Over the north end?
They're handy though.
They are nice.
Alright, where's Tom? We need Tom to the other side of the flag. Where's Tom? Where is he? Where let me go there. Frank, where are you, Frank? Ah, he's up there, it's fine.
Metro. Don't give up the day job.
Mechanics complex
Independence! No! Independence!
When do we want it? Now! Let's make some noise in Paisley today!
Don't be afraid. Tell Westminster Tories that Scotland's no longer your slave. Now baby says, well you see the refugees from the Yukon, show them that Scotland is good. Refugees from the Yukon, show them that Scotland is good.
I can't do the music with the copyright and all that, but
salt tiles out today in the state. Good. Thank God the wind's holding down for you.
That'd be a nightmare. It's like a great big flying kite then.
Right. Beautiful day for it, eh?
Right, good coming or not? Well, one person in particular, avoid it as much as you
that one was the deal, to be fair.
Okay, all under one van or something. It's what it's a belt or something.
For I would beg 500 pigs, and I would beg 500 more. Can I help you? Wake up, Paisley!
Yeah, sure, I would. Sure. Good on you. Thank you. I'm not far from the king because I don't get any start.
What do we want? What do we want it? What do we want? What do we want it? This is magical. Let's see, yeah? Well, actually no, because we turn right here, don't we? I'll say we've gone right down to street.
What do we want?
Independence!
When do we want it?
No!
What do we want?
Independence!
When do we want it?
No!
Tory!
Out!
Tory!
Out!
Tory!
Out!
Tory!
Out!
Tory!
Out!
Tory!
Out! Putin! Out! Putin! Out!
Sheena's there. It's not a joy.
Sheena!
Oh, hello.
Try to expose this. Right. Yes.
Alright, how are you?
I met you in Glasgow, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been a while.
Good to see you. That's great. Nice to see everybody out again.
Yeah, it's a lot better, right? A lot more than I thought.
See you later.
See ya.
Okay, comrades, got to store. We're not going to
Hey, David.
All right, somebody.
How are you?
one. Right in there. I got a whole giant screen. Right. Speed it up a wee bit for the mobility scooters and that. Go up the top of this hill.
Join us!
No opposition. Thank you. Yeah, no opposition. James.
Hey, Huntsman. How are you? All right.
Fantastic, thank you.
Good.
What do we want? What do we want? No! What do we want?
Independence!
What do we want?
No!
What do we want?
Independence!
What do we want? No!
Well done, everybody.
Independence!
Well done.
No!
Well done. Well done, everybody. Well done. Well done. Hey, Amanda! Watch yourself. Hiya. All right, David. Well done, everybody. No opposition. Well done, sorry. Well done, everybody. Thank you, sir. Well done, everybody. No opposition.
No way!
Yes. A pay rise for the police. Let's move on. Down.
When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Independence! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Independence! When do we want it? Now!
Well done. Keep going with you.
Thank you, Simon. Transfer!
Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Oh,
hello, sir. How are you doing?
Thank you. Nice to meet you, sir. Oh, hello. No opposition. No opposition. No opposition. Aye, well done. Thank you. Aye, the ditch that you did. Well done, yes, thank you. Well done, thank you. Well done, everybody. I'll see you along the edge. The opposition! Thank you.
Independence! No! Independence! No! No!
Tory! 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 What do we want?
Independence!
What do we want?
No!
What do we want?
Independence!
What do we want?
No!
What do we want?
Independence!
What do we want?
No!
What do we want?
Independence!
What do we want?
No!
What do we want?
Independence!
What do we want?
No!
What do we want?
Independence!
What do we want?
No!
Oh, please. She's too quiet. Too quiet. Not too lazy, I know.
My sister had to leave and give me her stuff. Get a bit top heavy. Happiness today. I'm on my way from misery to happiness today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm on my way from this way.
What do we want? When do we want to? What do we want? When do we want to?
Francesca.
Oh, I was wondering if that was you there. I was looking on you. I was like, no. How are you? Yeah, good. I've been watching all your TikToks.
That's good stuff. This is Big Smiler, isn't it? Big Blue. Big Blue. Big Blue. Smiler's the one in the back there. No, that's his Smiler's as well.
What do we want?
That's Big Blue.
Right. What do we want? Where do we want it? What do we want? Where do we want it? What do we want? Where do we want it? Tory! 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 What do we want? Where do we want it? What do we want? Where do we want it?
stop here for a minute. Just let it catch up a bit.
Mark, when you're on ahead.
Yeah.
You're ready 3 minutes. The next guy comes up. The guy comes up.
2-4. Maybe less than.
For health and education.
Not for war and occupation.
Good to go. Horse shake. Yeah. Oh, 12 o'clock horse shake.
Got it.
I had had a break since I got them in December. As I knew at Stockhill for a routine appointment. That's all right.
Sometimes my son would make up the correct questions because I deliberately put in the question. What was the first, least worst thing in Britain? There's nothing to take that. March against racism of the 19th? March against racism of the 19th?
Good business for ice cream. Got one there.
Right, yeah, you did.
I'm not the one that was fucking working.
Straight to that order.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks folks. This year, this demonstration, it's not the first demonstration we've had this year. We had one in Glasgow about a month or so ago about the whole cost of living crisis. We've decided to theme up the demonstrations today. And today's demonstration is obviously about the issue of poverty. But we couldn't let the war in Ukraine go by without mentioning it. We couldn't let that event disappear into the background. All under one banner, without reservation, condemns the invasion of Ukraine by the Russian government and the Russian military, without reservation. And we call on them to withdraw their troops. We support the right of Ukraine to self-determination, as we do support the right for Scotland to have its own government and its own country. We also, I think, have got to give a shout out to the solidarity movement in Russia, the brave people who are standing up to Putin in Russia, the anti-war movement in Russia. Quite a number of these have been arrested, but they're the brave people here, as well as the ones that are resisting the Russians. So shout out to the Russian anti-war movement. I think this war has highlighted a number of things, not least the threat of nuclear war. And never let's forget that Scotland is in the front line here. And one of the things we want to do is get rid of nuclear weapons out of Scotland. That's one of the things independence is about, getting rid of nuclear weapons out of Scotland and getting rid of nuclear weapons altogether. We also, as a country, welcome refugees to this country. We want to see the refugees coming, wherever they're coming from, not just from Ukraine, but from Afghanistan, everybody that's fleeing war and poverty and oppression. That's what we're about as well as a country, refugees coming. Final point before I introduce my next speaker. This demonstration is about poverty. Paisley is a symbolic area in Scotland. Two of the poorest regions in the country are in Paisley, right in this constituency here. We should remember that. And let's be clear, this war that's taking place will ramp up the shares and the profits of the oil companies, of the armaments companies, and it will mean that the cost of that will be put on ordinary people. So the energy prices will go up, poverty will become worse, and it's important that we make a stand in solidarity with people and fight against that. And that's one of the reasons why we're having this demonstration today about poverty, because we want Scotland to be a country in which people are looked after. They're not derided, but people are taken care of and supported. Okay, that's my few remarks, and I'm going to hand over now to our first speaker, which is local SNP councillor Kenny McLaren. Kenny, thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to Paisley, Scotland's largest and best town. If I'd known there was going to be so many people here, I would have brought some of my leaflets, and you could have helped me leaflet all the way into the town and back. In 2014, Paisley was the only constituency in Renfrewshire to vote for independence, to vote yes. But next time round, we need a bigger vote. We need the rest of Renfrewshire and the rest of Scotland following Paisley's lead. Paisley has a history of political radicalism. On your march, you passed Woodside Cemetery, and just up in Woodside Cemetery is a monument to the 1820 martyrs, Baird, Hardy and Wilson.
Well said, man.
Those three men gave their lives for a better Scotland. All we have to do is make a mark on a ballot paper. The theme for today's march is poverty, and as people know, Paisley's had more than its fair share of poverty and the impact it has on individuals, families and communities. But poverty is man-made, and unfortunately for us, it's made by a Tory government in Westminster who want to enrich themselves at the expense of everyone else. The Tories haven't won an election in Scotland since 1955. I mean, I don't remember, but I checked with George and he said that was when Bill Haley was singing Rock Around the Clock. Yet we're still subjected to Tory policies. And they don't really care who they target. They go for the people least able to defend themselves. They froze the pension triple lock, which means with rising prices, that pension is getting worthless. They cut the benefits to those most in need, but gave rises to MPs. And then the national insurance contributions, they put them up knowing that they would hit the lowest paid the worst. Let's be honest, you know, whether it breaks a Tory manifesto or promise, you know with the Tories, you just can't trust a Tory. Let's look at the record in COVID. Boris and his crooked cabinet weren't interested. They didn't prepare for the pandemic. The only time he got interested was when he found out how he could siphon public money into the private banks of his backers and his friends. £37 billion wasted on a track and test system that didn't work. 4.7 billion wasted or written off in dodgy contracts. And 72%, 72 pence in every pound spent on PPE equipment in England was wasted. They bought goods that didn't work and they paid over the odds for them. That's shocking, and yet no one's been held to account for it. We are now seeing inflation rising faster than it has in decades. Fuel prices going through the roof, and even food prices going higher. The campaigner and journalist Jack Monroe has done some research on some basic food staples, and the rate of their increasing. Bread up by 29% and rising. Baked beans 45% up and rising. And the cheapest packets of rice you can get from all of the major supermarkets have risen by a massive 344%. Ordinary people can't afford these rises. We don't have Russian oligarchs to back us up. The Scottish Government and local councils are doing the best they can with the limited resources they've got, but it's not enough. The UK's purse strings are held in Westminster, and it's time the Chancellor and the Prime Minister pulled their fingers out their collective hole and started putting people first. They should look at the rise in fuel prices. They can cap them, they can reduce them like France did, like Germany did. They can put tax on excess profits at the energy companies. They can bail out the people the same way they bailed out the banks, but they haven't. We need to make them do that. They won't do that willingly. We have to put pressure on every single Tory. See, when a Tory candidate comes to your door for the council election, ask him how he's going to make the Tories listen to the people, and then don't bother voting for him anyway. So, there is poverty in Paisley, that much is obvious. There is in every community in Scotland. But there is no poverty of ambition. We want to make Paisley a stronger town. We want to see a more vibrant Renfrewshire. And most of all, we want to see an independent Scotland. I know some people have been reluctant to come out in public during the COVID crisis, but as long as you stay safe, take precautions, please join in. We've got to recapture the hope, the ambition and the togetherness of 2014. It was a positive campaign when people with all different versions of what they saw as an independent Scotland could come together with one target in mind: independence. This time we need to be bigger, better and louder. We need everyone to get involved. Activists, supporters, politicians. It's not good enough to sit on the sidelines and leaving it to someone else. Get out, get active, show your support for independence and get the message out. In 1820, Baird, Hardy and Wilson marched under a banner, Scotland free or a desert. That message still stands today. No more delays, no more distractions. We need independence and we need it now. Thank you.
Just going to introduce the next speaker for you. And that's Angela McCormick from Stop the War Coalition. And
thanks everybody. I'm an anti-war activist and a member of Stop the War Coalition in Glasgow, and like probably many of you here, over the last few years we've had to take to the streets. And we know that for us as ordinary people, just like today, is the way that we come together, highlight the issues and get the voices across. So I thank you for the opportunity to address you today, and I want to thank Paisley for the lovely sunshine. Cheers. And I also want to extend my solidarity to all of those in Paisley, and I think it's really powerful to raise these issues of poverty. because like communities across Scotland, these are the stories, the issues that really don't get argued about enough, don't get highlighted enough. And I bring you a wee bit of solidarity for Postle Park in Glasgow, can't help myself. So what I want to say is that as part of the anti-war movement to Stop the War Coalition, it's important that we stand up and we say no to the Russian war, no to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We're here to demand that the Russian troops immediately are withdrawn. We see the bombardment, the destruction, the fear, the devastation of this Russian invasion. And we see also across the world how that has sparked sympathy and acts of solidarity with those currently suffering under this bombardment. Across Europe, across the world, people have taken to the streets in their thousands to oppose it. And tomorrow, just to draw your attention, tomorrow there's a global day of action that came out of a 2,000 strong online gathering of international anti-war voices, and they are calling for action tomorrow on Sunday, March the 6th. And these will take place across the world. And in Glasgow, if you're available, if you can make it, please join us at 12 noon in Buchanan Steps. I want today to send special solidarity to those Russian anti-war protesters, the people that we've seen immediately taken to the streets. They didn't question, they knew what was right, to oppose their own government, to oppose the warmongering of Putin, and they do so at incredible risk to themselves. Already we see repression increasing across Russia. People can face lengthy prison terms and sentences just for speaking out and just for standing up. So we send special solidarity to those people opposing Putin's warmongering. We stand with the people of Ukraine, and we stand with those in Russia bravely and inspiringly opposing Putin. Putin's war is a threat to us all, because we can see as we watch the imagery that it's bringing us all closer to nuclear war or nuclear accident. Either way, nuclear disaster. So at Stop the War, we want to repeat our determination that nuclear weapons everywhere be dismantled, removed, and we need to see Trident scrapped. Do you feel safe? Do you feel safer today knowing that Trident is a few miles up the road? That argument is gone, and we need to make sure that Trident is scrapped. And we can see, unfortunately, that this is a very real threat, threatening all of us. The hope has to be in Ukraine and around the world for a negotiated solution that maintains Ukraine's right to determine its own policies and government, absolutely free from military Russian aggression, and also free from threats or pressures or manoeuvring by NATO and its allies and in the US. If our wish across the world is this peaceful negotiated solution, then we as in Stop the War say that any attempts to escalate in this situation won't lead to that kind of peace that we all need. NATO escalation, pouring more and more arms in, maintaining this intent to continue the Cold War, to make it hot, these do not offer peace to any of us. And while also I want to mention the oligarchs, did we really need to wait to the Russian brutal invasion to sanction the oligarchs? We knew where their yachts were parked for years, but we need to look to see solutions that actually make things different and have a different foreign policy. Because we've seen wars and occupations in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Palestine, Yemen, and in every one we argue that ordinary people pay the price. Over 1 million, 1.5 million Ukrainian people have had their lives uprooted, forced to flee, heading to borders, seeking safety, seeking to make contact with families. And we utterly condemn the shameful response of the UK government that even in the midst of this horror still insists on bureaucracy and visas and racism, the same racism that we face every day. So we say let all of the refugees in, waive all visas, give sanctuary to the people fleeing for the Ukraine, and give sanctuary to those fleeing from wars everywhere, whether it be Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Somalia or Sudan. We need to welcome refugees, and we know that through our movements across Scotland, we know that that's a majority. We know that people feel that empathy, they see the plight, they want to extend that hand of solidarity. The final point I want to make is that when we see the turmoil and destruction, and we see the violence and aggression and military might, and we see the might of the mainstream media, okay, I don't need to tell you too much about that, but the pressure will be on all of us to lower our struggles, to lower our expectations, to continue to fight for better pay and increased money for the NHS, increased money for education, and we need to insist that that's not the case. And that's why today's highlighting of poverty is so important, because often in times of war they ask ordinary people to pay the price, whether they be in Ukraine with their lives, or they ask us to pay the price here to fuel that drive or to fuel that battle. We need to remember that just prior to this war, all eyes were in Boris Johnson's government being investigated by the police because they partied, they dined, they ate cake, they sang happy birthday. Well, during the COVID pandemic, families and communities were ravaged. These people need to be kept on the hook, and we need to make sure within the next few days and weeks we have an anti-war movement that is able to do that, that can oppose the brutality of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and demand the troops are removed immediately, but will not let that hide the reality of what Boris Johnson and his government are trying to do to us here in Scotland and the UK. We need to extend solidarity to all those protesting in their own areas for improvement, a better life, because fundamentally I believe that it's about priorities, and our priorities: good health, good education, respect, dignity, prioritising, all the things that we're highlighting here today when you're marching on poverty. I believe that it is. And I'll just finish there. I just want to finish, there was a wee message for some Russian socialist campaigners, and they ended their appeal for solidarity in these difficult circumstances opposing the war with freedom to the peoples, death to empires. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Angela. Before I introduce the next speaker, I've got a couple of announcements. Stand Up to Racism, as part of UN Anti-Racism Day, are holding a demonstration on 19th of March, starting in Kelvin Grove Park at 11 AM. This is particularly important this year with the whole issue of refugees. There's going to be an indie block on the demonstration, so we'd hope that you guys will all turn up on the 19th of March and support the March Against Racism at Kelvin Grove Park. So hope to see you there on 19th of March. Second wee announcement is Mike Fennick is over at the Indie 2 Cafe collecting signatories for the Declaration for a Sovereign Scotland. So if you want to sign, go over and over to the Indie 2 Cafe and sign there. Okay, thanks, that's the announcements over. Next speaker is George Adam, MSP, SNP. Thank you, George.
I think you're going to have to get the mic a wee bit bigger. Thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for asking me to attend today's meeting and address this. I'm Paisley's MSP. I was the first the parliamentary politician for the SNP in Renfrewshire, and I take that extremely seriously because we've always spoke about positive Paisley. Paisley has its challenges like many other places in Scotland, but it's mainly because these challenges are there because the union has failed Paisley and the union has failed Scotland. And I think that's one of the things we need to keep toiling everybody as we go out. I'll remind you of a story that I had during the first independence referendum, where I was chapping doors in Fergusley Park, to my right, to your left, where I chapped this one door, where this young woman came to the door and she said to me, "George, I'm voting for independence." And I said, "Well, why is it?" "Because I've got nothing to lose." Now that's not the Scotland I want. I want people supporting independence because they can see the positive change we can make in their life. They can see the positive change in the world that Scotland and independent Scotland can make, and they can see that we can build that better tomorrow. Now, one of the things that constantly I think about constantly, I was talking to my good friend Patricia Gibson, and MP, and Kenny Gibson, MSP, when we were going round the march. I joined the SNP in 1987. That was a very good year. St Mirren won the Scottish Cup, and I also joined the SNP. And at that point, it wasn't about elected office for me or for anyone else. It was purely about independence and building a better future for the people of Paisley. Because I could see, like now, Paisley was in the midst of a Tory UK government that had destroyed the infrastructure, destroyed the business, destroyed people's lives. Friends of mine left this great town to go and find work and jobs elsewhere. They moved all over to leave the town of Paisley to make their way in the world elsewhere. And that's wrong. And that's wrong because the union has failed us here. Because we in Paisley and in Scotland should be talking about that brighter tomorrow and how we're going to make people's lives better. It's about creating that positive vision of what independence will do for all of us. It's about us taking matters into our own hands and making these decisions. And I will never tire of ensuring that I started this and it was about my generation and ensuring that we never had another dominant Tory government. I got older, got married, had kids. It became about my kids, making a better future for them, making sure that my children didn't suffer the way that my generation had. And now, unfortunately, and I know you won't believe me, I'm a grandparent. I was a child bride. But now I'm a grandparent and now I'm talking about my grandchildren's future, because I don't want my grandchildren living in the current world. I want Scotland's voice to be one of the voices that the world listens to. I joined the SNP for independence and I was against having nuclear weapons in any shape or form. And an independent Scotland can tell the world that we want nothing to do with nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction. I think when we look at the current world, the way things are, who would have thought we'd have been in a place where a European nation had been invaded by a Russian? Those of us of, I think we're called Generation X, will remember we grew up believing we were going to die in a nuclear Armageddon. And unfortunately, young people like my kids and my grandkids are now thinking that this is a possibility now. This is where an independent Scotland can be that sane voice, that voice that will say, we believe in peace, we believe in discussion, we believe in supporting independent sovereign states to their right to be able to continue, and we believe in doing what's right. That is what an independent Scotland is all about to me. So yes, I will continue chapping doors. That's all we have to do is convince people to put that cross in that box. I'll continue campaigning here in Paisley. I'll continue selling and pitching that message of how we can be a better nation and how we can lead the world and show the world what a small country like Scotland can be and what we can give. And first and foremost, for me, it will always be about independence.
Okay, I'm just going to give it a wee bit of what I usually say, which is all under one banner brings the sunshine, doesn't it, every time? It's on our side, this sunshine. Just want to introduce the next guest, Mr. Richie Benton, Scottish Socialist Party, and he was the first guy to be victimised and sacked, the first trade union leader to be victimised and sacked during COVID. Give a big hand for Richie.
Thanks very much for the invitation to speak on behalf of the Scottish Socialist Party. Our party, since we were formed in 1998, have consistently fought to defend the democratic right to self-determination for every nation, and in the case of Scotland, not only argued for independence, but for a unique and specific form of that, an independent socialist Scotland to wipe out poverty and inequality. Self-determination is a principle that we should defend as a democratic right consistently. And for that reason, as well as humanitarian reasons, we utterly oppose the invasion of Ukraine by Putin, the gangster capitalist regime of Vladimir Putin, call for the immediate withdrawal of their troops and for the right of the people of Ukraine to decide their own future. We also stand up for the right to self-determination, the right to democratic self-government, if they so wish, for the Russian minorities within Ukraine. It's a principle we need to provide and apply consistently. And I think in this country, one of the tasks is to put pressure on the governments and to demand
that they offer the hands and arms of friendship and of refuge to those fleeing the persecution of the bloody war in Ukraine, to give them refuge in this country. But whilst doing that, we should have no time for the stinking hypocrisy of Boris Johnson, of the West, of NATO and others when they prattle on about defending democratic rights. Because NATO is not a peace-loving, peacekeeping alliance. NATO is a nuclear-led alliance of imperialism dominated by the United States. And NATO has marauded the globe, not just in Europe, not just the Middle East, but in the likes of Africa, toppling governments, assassinating popular leaders, expanding their influence across the globe so as to keep it under the influence and dominance of the profiteers and the warlords of the West. So let's not have any time for the hypocrites when they preach democracy. We're the people that consistently fight for the democratic rights of national minorities and nations, and not these hypocrites that try to use the current situation to appear good in public. And we stand on the side of the Ukrainian people. We stand on the side of the Russian oppositionists to the war at the present time. We stand in the interests of the working class of Ukraine, of Russia, and right throughout the world. And incidentally, that's one of the several reasons why the Scottish Socialist Party is utterly opposed to the idea of an independent Scotland being part of NATO. We have to break from that. And we want to escape NATO, to escape being entangled in wars, to escape being responsible for the continuation of Trident and the wastage, the squandering of £200 billion, which should instead be invested in health, in education, in a national care service worthy of the name, in schools and in free public transport, amongst many other things that would help to wipe out poverty and inequality. For the Scottish Socialist Party, independence is a right, but it's also a means to an end. It's a means to eliminating poverty and inequality. We don't want an independent Scotland that just continues simply to bow down to the dictatorship of big business, the dictatorship of capital, and robs the rest of us for the profit of the few. We want a socialist Scotland that can use the wealth of this nation for the benefit of its people. We need measures right now to convince the working class majority of the virtues of independence. We need, for example, to tackle the crime of fuel poverty in this energy-rich nation by measures like the Scottish Government investing vast amounts in a retrofit of all the homes in Scotland, free of charge, free insulation, new boilers, draft flipping and so on, to cut down bills and cut down global warming in this corner of the planet. And we also need, instead of selling off the wind power of Scotland for a penny, we need to instead demand public ownership of all forms of energy so as to cut out the profiteering, slash the bills and provide clean, green, affordable energy to every home in this country. And to convince people, we also need to demand things like a decent pay rise for every worker in Scotland in order to at least match inflation, which is rocketing, as we know. That applies to the likes of the council workers who've just been offered a derisory rise of 2%. It applies to the college lecturers. It applies to the women in Glasgow fighting for equal pay 52 years after the Equal Pay Act was passed in Parliament. And it should be underpinned by a minimum wage of at least £12 an hour for everybody at the age of 16 upwards. That's the kind of Scotland we need to tackle poverty and inequality. And we also need to bring in measures, in my view, to conclude, like free public transport to tackle poverty and pollution. Not parking charges when you go to work, like the government is threatening to introduce and local government is threatening to bring in. not increased taxation on electricity bills and so on in a so-called green tax. We need free public transport to make it possible to wipe out pollution, poverty and social isolation. In conclusion, what we mean by all that is a socialist Green New Deal, the beginnings of what would be a socialist Scotland, independent of poverty, independent of inequality, independent of the rule of the Tories in Westminster. We need an independent socialist Scotland, because if we're going to make poverty history, we need to make the rotten, corrupt system of capitalism history. Fight on.
Thanks, Richie. Just before I introduce our next speaker, I've got a couple of more announcements. I'm afraid I'm the announcements guy here. Whiskey Joe's Pub in New Street in Paisley is inviting everybody to come down afterwards. There's music, karaoke, sandwiches. Go down there after the rally. They're supporters of the All Under One banner and independence. The other thing I want to say is, if people are leaving, could you go over to the stall and take some of these leaflets with you for the rallies, the other rallies we've got and demonstrations throughout Scotland in 2022. Next one is on the 2nd of April in Arbroath, so if you can take some of these away with you, that would be absolutely brilliant. Our next speaker is Jeff Bush from the Scottish Sovereign Review Group. Jeff, thank you.
I'm going to talk about sovereignty and why it's vitally important. I'm going to talk briefly about poverty in Scotland and why independence is essential if we're ever to make a history. We've had a lot about sovereignty in the last couple of weeks. We're all urged to support the sovereignty of the Ukrainian people against the aggression of their big unfriendly neighbour, roughly 3 times their population. The West is united and unanimous in its support for the sovereignty of Ukraine. The UK has loudly voiced its support for Ukrainian sovereignty, for the rights of Ukraine citizens to be an independent country, despite the colonial ambitions of its big neighbour. We Scots should support Ukrainian sovereignty in that country's hour of need. Of course we should. Our big brother is more friendly, at least on the surface, with more than 10 times our population. But it's not Ukrainian sovereignty that I want to talk about today. It's Scottish sovereignty. My sovereignty. Your sovereignty. The sovereignty of the Scottish people that I want to discuss. I'm a member of an independent think tank called the Scottish Sovereignty Research Group, SSRG for short. The group was formed just over a year ago and has about 25 regular and occasional members and contributors, including pro-Indy campaigners from both independence parties and none, wise old heads still involved in politics, current politicians, and a smattering of university professors from Scotland, France and the US. SSRG is very active. We meet at least once a week. I'm going to tell you about the 3 main thrusts to our work. Firstly, 6 routes to independence. Yes, you heard that correctly. 6 potential routes to independence. The various routes that Scotland can take towards the restoration of its independence, some of which are based on the sovereignty of the Scottish people, as stated in the 1320 Declaration of Arbroath, and the Claim of Right, which the Queen still acknowledges every year when opening the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland, and which is embodied in the Treaty of Union. This proves beyond doubt that the people of Scotland are sovereign, not the Crown and Parliament as the case is in England, but the people, you and me. Some of the 6 routes to independence are constitutionally hazardous because they specifically contradict the fact that the people of Scotland are sovereign. The very idea that the Scottish Parliament should request permission for a referendum from the UK Parliament completely contradicts the sovereignty of the Scottish people and implicitly acknowledges Westminster as sovereign. Secondly, the Constitution. The UK has no written constitution, which in effect means that the Constitution is whatever the Westminster Parliament decrees it's going to be from time to time. An independent Scotland will have a written constitution whose principles will be largely fixed. Thirdly, what should an independent Scotland look and behave like? What's the people's vision for Scotland? And how should the government be shaped in order to help deliver that vision? Questions like, what currency should we use? What should we do about the border? What should our legal system look like? Should it be separate from government? How soon should we establish our central bank? What will be its role in the economy? What should be the goals of our pensions, social security and education system? What ports and transport infrastructure do we need? On trade, should we join EFTA right away or wait another decade and join the EU? Who should own the land? Who should own Scotland's land? It's an extraordinarily ambitious set of activities that SSRG has. Maybe something that a government should be doing. Or maybe it's too important an agenda to entrust to government. Anyhow, they have our permission to tackle it as well if it takes their fancy. So how does SSRG plan to undertake this mountain of work? Well, by starting now to get the message out to the indie movement and enlist the strength and depth of the movement to share and develop the process, and in fact to own it. We'll undertake a series of 10 or 12 roadshows starting this month, where the first part of each roadshow will comprise presentations of the 6 routes to independence and discussion about the advantages and limitations of each. The second part of each roadshow will feature discussion on one of the key aspects of an independent Scotland. Participants in each roadshow will be asked to take away the routes to independence material to enable them to continue the discussion with their different groups. The series of roadshows and follow-up events are intended to lead to the generation and ingathering of ideas about routes to independence and visions of an independent Scotland, which will be brought together to inform the agenda of an independence conference in late summer. Okay. At the conference, the 6 routes to independence will be debated in a civilised way, and maybe a preferred route or set of preferred routes will emerge. The 10 or so key aspects of the vision for an independent Scotland will also be discussed, led by panels of acknowledged experts in the various fields, but highly influenced by contributions from folk. All of the outputs from the conference itself will be carried forward to our People's Independence Convention, which will be called for the autumn. We might even decide to visit to invite some politicians. We need independence now. We've already organised some of the roadshow venues, virtual and physical, scheduled already, and we'll publicise these so that people can take part, so that anybody can take part. But if you want us to put on a live or virtual roadshow for your own organisation, then just come and talk to me here. I'll look on the SSRG website. Thank you for listening, and please take part in SSRG's roadshows. Have your say about the future of our country. Thank you.
Just like to say thank you to George and introduce Andy Doig, Councillor Andy Doig from Scotia Future.
Thanks very much. I'd like to thank all under one banner for inviting me here today. I'm Councillor Andy Doig. I'm a councillor in Renfrewshire Council, and I'm here today to represent Scotia Future, which is a pro-independence party that wants real independence and a Scotland of equals. My good friend Kenny McLaren mentioned the 1820 memorial that we passed at Woodside Cemetery. Their slogan was Scotland free or a desert. I'm very proud to represent the descendants of the radical weavers of Kilbarchan and Lochwinnock, who I represent today on Renfrewshire Council. The weavers of Renfrewshire were the backbone of the radical movement in the 18th and 19th centuries in Scotland. And I just wonder today, what would the 1820 martyrs think about the world situation? Well, I think their message today would be quite strong and quite simple. I think it would be Russia out of Ukraine and Scotland out of NATO.
Russia out of Ukraine and Scotland out of NATO, because NATO is not the answer for either the Ukraine or for Scotland. Because NATO should have considered how eastward expansion would be viewed. If you listen to the man who did more to try and bring Russia into the democratic age, Boris Yeltsin, said in September 1993, the spirit of the Treaty on German Reunification precludes the option of expanding the NATO zone into the east. This does not excuse the hellish occupation of Ukraine by Putin, but it does explain how he's used that and twisted that fact to lie to the Russian people. And we have to expose that. Now, there's some in the Yes movement believe that an independent Scotland has to be in NATO because we need to do that to be a responsible world citizen. Now, really, is that really the only route we have to take? Are the Finns, the Swiss, the Irish and the Swedes irresponsible? No. Do they take part in UN peacekeeping missions? Yes. And so would an independent Scotland. Now, the unionist parties in the media say, how would an independent Scotland defend itself? Well, sadly, the Daily Mail and the Daily Express and other rags obviously have never noticed that the Scots have sadly been at the forefront of Britain's imperial adventures over the last 250 years, from India to Ireland and everywhere in between. I really think the Scots will manage to defend themselves. But I think an independent Scotland will face challenges. If we're to look at a position of armed neutrality, we might need to look at full gender parity in the forces. We might need to look at mandatory military service like the Swiss. We might need to look at a neutrality pact with countries like Ireland, Sweden and Finland. And you'll have noticed today in the news that public opinion in Finland and Sweden has rapidly moved in favour of joining NATO. I can understand why that's the case with the situation we're in, but I have to say, really, if these countries were to join NATO, it would be the high road to hell, not the road to peace. An independent Scotland can work for peace and prepare for self-defence, and that is where we want to be as a responsible nation. Finally, the radical nationalist tradition in Scotland, because Scotia Future doesn't have any qualms about calling ourselves nationalists, because the nationalist tradition in a Scottish context has always been for the people and against the establishment. Like the 1820 radicals, the radical nationalist tradition in Scotland has always worked for the final victory of freedom. So let's leave here today with a message of victory to the Ukrainian resistance, victory to the anti-war movement in Russia, and victory to Scotland's right to national independence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody lost a pair of glasses left at the Now Scotland stall? You come over and get them from me here if you've lost them. Okay, our next speaker is David Henry from the Alba Party. David, thank you.
Hello. It's wonderful to be in front of a crowd that actually supports independence. And indeed, I'm with the Alba Party. And not only do we want independence, and not only will it be the start of Scotland's rebirth for the benefit of everyone that lives here, new Scots, old Scots, our friends, our neighbours, we are here to build a better future. The little bit of breeze that we can feel, that's Scotland's energy. It's free. It hasn't gone up in price. So why are our energy bills going up? They're going up because England didn't invest in its energy production. 97.5% of our energy, our electricity, last year in Scotland was produced from wind. The cost of wind hasn't changed. Scotland will have an independently owned, for the better of the public's, energy company. That is Alba's policy. It was our friends in the SNP's policy until quite recently. So I think on the 5th of May, when you get a chance to vote, vote Alba 1 and any other Indie supporting party number 2. Now we're here because we have a crisis of poverty, which we didn't create, but we can help fix it. I've been going out for the last 10 days, 2 weeks, to visit parents outside schools and hand them a nice little business card because I'm standing for election in the Edinburgh Council election on the 5th of May. I want to support parents, so I'll tell you something that happened last week. After near the end of handing out maybe 30 to 40 cards to parents, a little girl comes back with one of my cards that I'd given to her mother. This is a lesson for everybody, incidentally. So the little girl comes up to me with the card in her hand and goes, "What's this all about?" She was 6 years old. I said, "It's for the council election. I'm standing to be a councillor." "What's that?" And I said, "For the council, we run the buses, we deal with social housing, we run the school." "Oh, are you going to be the president?" she said. And I said, "No, anyway, we run the school." "Oh, will we get new books?" Well, put it this way. The priority for people like me is to improve the next generation. So yes, we will get new books. We will spend money on things that improves people's lives. We will not waste the money. So, support Alba, support the SNP, support ISP, support yes supporting parties, and let's get independence delivered urgently. Thank you.
Just up to introduce the next speaker, who is Rory Anderson, a Unison activist, for Social Work Action Network.
Cheers, thanks very much. I mean, it's great that everyone's here, and I'm actually very proud that people have come out to Paisley to actually march around poverty. When I grew up in Johnson, and I have seen over successive decades the amount of cuts to working class people over generations, where the housing schemes have been broken, communities have been broken. I live in Paisley, and the place that I live in is being broken, and the families that I work with are continually pushed into poverty. And now with this latest round of cuts that are coming round, are going to further that exploitation and oppression for people that live in Scotland. And it's so sad to see families who end up coming to me because they're poor, not because of their own choices, not because of the situation they've got themselves into, but because of political choices by a political class who actually want to put wars and their own political priorities in front of the people who need money to survive. And these are political choices. We need to be aware that they're political choices because we can afford it. And we can actually have a resistance to that, and it's so wonderful for people to come out and actually do something against it, because we've got our own political choice, which is actually to stand and fight for independence, is to get out in the streets, is to march, is to campaign for everyone to come out in solidarity with the people of Ukraine and Russia, to actually make a voice heard so we can change the political course in Scotland. And I would say to everyone here, if you still, the people who are still here at least, is actually continue fighting. Get out in your streets tomorrow for the Stop the War campaign. Get out in your streets and fight for independence further, because today the choices we make can actually make a difference. What we do matters. So let's make a change now, and let's from today fight for an independent Scotland that's actually going to take people away from poverty rather than further instill it from the Westminster rule. I think today we have to understand that it's not just about Scotland becoming independent. Actually, I think we have to fight for politics now that will change the course of what independence looks like. That means fighting racism, it means fighting against poverty, and it means fighting against a political class who could come into power in Scotland. Let's not be aware of that and actually change the course of independence and put our politics in place. I'm going to keep it short and sweet because I quite like the sun, and it's a rare time you get sun in Paisley. So everyone have a good day, but from tomorrow, from today and from next week, go out, fight for independence and fight for solidarity of the working class around the world.
Thanks, Rory. Maybe we should ask somebody to write a song about sunshine on Paisley rather than sunshine on me. Anyway, the next speaker who knows very well the issue that refugees and immigrants fleeing oppression know about, and that's Mohammed Asif from the Afghan Human Rights Foundation. Mohammed.
Thank you, brothers and sisters. Firstly, on behalf of my family and the family of independence, let's send our support and solidarity to the people of Ukraine. Brothers and sisters, I can feel the pain of Ukrainians, because when Putin was only 27 years old and the USSR invaded my country, Afghanistan, with the Red Army, killed 1.9 million Afghans, destroyed our country. Until today we are suffering because of Russia. So when I see the women and children especially running for shelter from Putin bombs, it reminds me of my childhood when we did the same, running away from the Russian bombs. But brothers and sisters, there is a hypocrisy with the Western world. I saw Boris 4 days ago calling Putin a war criminal. No doubt about it, Putin is a war criminal. He's a mass murderer. But there is a man maybe 10 or 15 miles away living from Boris Johnson called Tony Blair, who killed 1 million Iraqis along with Bush and NATO's, and that man is not called war criminal, and the West is calling Putin war criminal. As they're right, he is a war criminal, but we do not have to be selective. Brothers and sisters, today an independence is even more important when we see the war in Ukraine. I came to this country as a refugee from Afghanistan, running away from the likes of Taliban. The British went to war and many Scottish kids were killed, and I took part in their funerals in Scotland. But 20 years later, Boris and Biden handed over Afghanistan to the same terrorists or the bunch of barbarian killers, Taliban. Brothers and sisters, when we talk about refugees, I have every sympathy with the Ukrainians, because I have been through in my life, my family, my parents, my relatives, my country, women and children. But when we talk about refugees, we do not have to be selective. When the Western politicians, the media, the major media and pundits calling the Ukrainians civilized, yes, they're civilized because they're human beings, and they're telling us that we are, the Iraqis, the Syrian, the Libyan, the Afghans are uncivilized, as though our life is very, very cheap. We have been bombed for many, many years by NATO, by the Russians, by the Americans. Brothers and sisters, we need an independent Scotland which says no to illegal wars, which says no to illegal invasion, which says no to nuclear weapons, which says no to Trident, which welcomes everybody like myself, who is a new Scot, although I'm getting old in this country now. I have been here for 22 years. But brothers and sisters, Britain should open their borders to any refugees. You know, when we talk about the wars which produce refugees, when Britain and the right-wing media and the Tories come on television blaming asylum seekers for every problem in Britain, brothers and sisters, if we want less refugees, Britain and NATO, Putin and others should bomb less countries. They should not invade other countries. They should respect to their sovereignty. Brothers and sisters, you know, if we look up to Boris Johnson, you know, the British policy is made in Washington. When Washington wants to go to a war, we are dragged into a war. Scotland is dragged into an illegal war, like in Iran, Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, in Afghanistan, and so many other countries. Brothers and sisters, I call upon today from Paisley, this shining Paisley today, the sun is shining, on Nicola Sturgeon. that she should not wait for any permission or any legality. She should set out a date for independent Scotland and the people of Scotland, no matter what your background is, what your politics is, whether you're Muslim or Christian or Scots or non-Scots, we should come together and fight our corner. Because brothers and sisters, think about our children, our future generations. If we leave it to Boris and the Tories and others and the war criminals in this country, I think we will have no country. So brothers and sisters, keep the fight. Welcome refugees in Scotland, because they are just human beings just like me and you. I gave you one example. Let's think, 1.5 or 2 years ago, did we not fight for a pack of pasta? Did we not fight for a packet of paracetamol or over a toilet paper because we want to feed our children? So the same is with refugees. When the bombs are dropping in Ukraine, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, and Syria, when the British bombs made in Scotland, killing innocent Yemeni women and children, especially in Yemen. The Saudis, the biggest weapons buyer from Britain, is killing innocent women and children in Yemen. The weapons made in Scotland. Scotland needs to stop this. Scotland needs to divorce this abusive marriage. So let's fight, keep the fight. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just to let you know, we've got our final speaker coming up, and this is a speaker from Now Scotland called Charlotte Ahmed. Big hand for Charlotte, please.
Come on folks, we're still here, and are you glad you came out today? Yes! Because we have a task, a historic task. We want to achieve independence for Scotland. But that's not necessarily easy. We need to unite people under that flag. There's so many different reasons now that has been reflected in the speakers we've had today. So many different reasons why we urgently need independence. This is a time of war and poverty. If those of you who know a little bit of history will know, in times of war and poverty, people, ordinary people of the grassroots have to revolt. They have to organise and get into the streets and say to the rulers, no, this is not going to continue. We want to organise things differently, as if people matter and not billionaires. How many of you feel any safer in the conditions of the world today because there is nukes at Paisley? None of us are safer because they are there, those abominations. Get rid of those weapons. We've been saying it for long enough, and yet they are still there. So how do we build this independence movement to get rid of them and to get rid of the system that keeps them there? I want you to go back to your communities, to your streets, to your workplaces, to your families, to your trade unions, and say, we need to be part of this fight for independence. And thanks to All Under One Banner for reminding us that one of those tasks is to get out into the street. And as you know, there are several demonstrations. Get this leaflet. You might not be able to go to all of them, but let's get to some of them, and let's make each one bigger than the last. Next one is our Broth on the 2nd of April, and then the 14th of May in Glasgow. And I hope there are tens of thousands of people there, because we need to fight. Our leaders have had the chance and they've blown the chance. Let's mobilise this movement against war, against nukes, against poverty, and for independence in Scotland. See you in Arbroath in Glasgow. Thank you for coming, and keep up the fight.
Thanks, Charlotte. She's really ended the demonstration for us saying a few things I was wanting to say, so I'm not going to labour the point. The only other thing I'm going to say here is that, remember the Indie Block on March the 19th in the March Against Racism. join us in that march, get part of the ND block. Okay, thanks for coming folks, see you in Arbroath, see you in March 19th, thank you.
I'm on my way from misery to happiness today. I'm on my way from misery to happiness today. I'm on my way to what I want from this world. And years from now, you'll make it to the next world. And everything that you receive up yonder is what you gave to me today. I wonder. I took a right turning yesterday. Yeah, I took a right turning yesterday. I took the road that brought me to your hometown. I took the bus to streets that I could walk down. I walked the streets to find the one I looked for. I climbed the stair that led me to your front door. I know that I don't want for anything. I have a Joseph saying I'm sitting on top of the world. I'll do my best to do the best I can. Yeah, I'll do my best to do the best I can. To keep my feet from jumping from the ground, dear. To keep my heart from jumping through my mouth, dear. To keep the past and not the present. To try and learn when you teach me a lesson. I know that I don't want for anything. I have a Joseph saying I'm sitting on top of the world. I'm on my way from misery to happiness.